This podcast is brought to you by PodSpot Events.
Hello Bondi podcast listeners. The guest on this episode is Jennifer McCloy. Now with Jennifer, we could have took this conversation in hundreds of different directions, given all the cool things Jennifer's done in her life. But we decided to hone in on surrogacy and the surrogacy laws in Australia. In this episode, we talk about Jennifer's experience as being a surrogate for her best friend Edwina. We talk about the out-of-date surrogacy laws right here in Australia. And we talk about the unregulated world of the surrogate black market. You don't want to miss that story. I'd like to thank Jennifer for coming on to share her story and her experience. And I hope you enjoy this episode. As always, remember to give us a follow on Instagram at the Bondi Podcast to stay up to date with all of our guests and episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a follow on Spotify where you'll find all our episodes as well. Cheers. Jen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, as you know, the first question we ask all of our guests is, what is your favourite thing about Bondi?
I had to give this a lot of thought because I've seen some pretty good answers. Honestly, I'm going to be really cliche. I just like the real spectrum of people that we have here. So you have, all types, backpackers all the way through to super wealthy, and I just think that creates a really nice, I don't want to use the word community because everybody does, but that's what it creates.
Yeah. Oh, that's one of my favorite things as well. And it's actually like this street right behind us, Lamrock Avenue, is like the perfect example of that.
Totally.
You've got like the backpackers right in the middle of the street, and then you've got like $4 and $5 million properties either side of it.
Totally. Yeah. And I don't know. I just think that particularly now I've got kids, I just think it's nice for them to sort of live somewhere where there's all types of people.
Yeah, 100%.
Really nice.
And it's we all just sort of coexist quite nicely together, I find.
Yeah.
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 Because like a lot of the backpackers will go to like the same gym or coffee shop as these absolute minted millionaires or billionaires. So we all just kind of, we all go to the same place. Yeah. The lower middle, but
totally.
Yeah, exactly. Jen, you've been here in Bondi like a while.
I have.
And I'm started to ask this question to some of my guests that have been here a while. Like, what would you change about Bondi if you could change like one thing?
Parking.
Care to elaborate?
It's the worst. I mean, we're lucky enough to have a park at our place, but I've lived in a couple of places in Bondi and parking's just always been, can I say bitch? I don't know.
Yeah, you can swear. You can do whatever you want in this podcast.
It's a real bitch,
yeah.
But no, what would I change? I think, what's really interesting? I had a friend who came and stayed here for a while, and she used to live over North Side, and she was house sitting over in Bondi. And she said to me, she's like, I just feel like in Bondi you walk out and everybody's looking you up and down. Like you've got to look great all the time. And I was like, I don't feel that way because I live here and I don't think that that's the vibe. But I think I'd probably change its reputation. Like I think that it has a bad reputation in some ways in that way. But I think if you live here, my answer to that last question, if you live here, there's such a spectrum. It doesn't feel that way. Everyone's in bare feet. It's great. So that's my answer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. And certainly before I even moved here, I had that like concept, like
perception. Do I need to be beautiful all the time?
Well, no, just like that perception of like the Sydney eastern suburbs. So when I first moved to Australia, I lived in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And when I moved up to Sydney, I was like, I'm never going to be one of those like eastern suburbs wankers who lives in fucking Bondi or Coogee. And look at me now. I've been
the
here.
Bondi podcast.
I know, with the cavoodle dog as well. Like,
I
am such a cliche, but I love it. Like, I wouldn't change it. Yeah.
Cliches are cliches because they're good.
Yeah.
That's the point. Like, they get overused because they're great. Like, a cliche. So I think, and I actually think, honestly, I think Bondi in terms of the eastern suburbs is the least like that. Because there's such the spectrum of people. Mm-hmm. Like you go into Paddington, Double Bay, like that is eastern suburbs, the whole cliche. But I think Bondi is different in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on your point there as well about like getting looked up and down, that's something that one of our previous guests, Nick Slater, he sort of referenced that as his thing he would like changed about Bondi. He said, he gave an example, like him and his girlfriend would go for a coastal walk and, they'd be walking one way and two girls would be walking the other way. And like the two girls would like look Nick's girlfriend like up and down just to 100%. Like assess her, like analyze her.
Yep. And it's that whole thing of like when I I always call it errand gear when people wear active wear but they're not actually doing any exercise. Just errand gear. And it's that whole thing, like full face of makeup, full like, glam, and then that. And I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like that perpetuates the idea that you have to look fabulous all the time. And I totally understand what Nick's talking about.
Just a quick word from me, guys, and please don't skip over this. Do you want a free coffee from me? We're making some really good progress on Spotify and YouTube. I've set myself a goal of having 1,000 followers on Spotify and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2025. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to pause this episode right now, jump into your Spotify app, click that follow button, then jump into your YouTube app, click that subscribe button. It really, really helps with the show, and it would mean an awful lot to me. And as a thank you to everyone that does that, here's what I'm proposing. If you see me out and about in person and you can show me on your phone that you are subscribed to the podcast on YouTube and following it on Spotify, I'll buy you a coffee. Can't say fairer than that. But here's the thing. You've got to be subscribed on YouTube and following it on Spotify to qualify for that free coffee. How does that sound? Cheers. Look, Jen, we could have taken this conversation in multiple directions this evening, given like all the crazy, interesting, cool stuff that you've done in your life.
I'll take that.
We're deciding to like focus in on the surrogacy and the surrogacy advocacy work that you've done. For those that might be listening who don't necessarily know what surrogacy is, like how would you explain it?
The best way to explain it, I mean, look, I'll explain it properly and then I'll explain it how I explained it to my dad. So surrogacy is when you choose to carry a baby for somebody else. So that might be that you offer your egg as well as carrying as well. So you can be a gestational surrogate, which is just carrying the baby, or you can offer your egg as well to be part of, the creation of the child. But I was a gestational surrogate, so I carried a baby for two of my friends. So it was their embryo and I carried the child for the 9 months.
So let's
and then I'll describe it how I described it to my dad, because that sort of boomer generation, it's like a totally wild concept for them. And I've said this before in an interview and they loved it, but I was like so embarrassed. Anyway, I explained it to my dad as it's like Airbnb. So, because he was trying to work out if he was related to the child. And I was like, no, Dad, it's like Airbnb. They just move in for a while and move out again. I was like, and you never see them again. No, that's not true. But that's the best way to explain it to a boomer generation.
Yeah. And how did your dad take the news when you
do you know what? It's funny. You're the first person who's asked me that.
No way.
Yeah. So he really honestly, my dad is, first of all, my dad is like my hero. But he's a man of few words. So he's a farmer and he's that generation. And just when he speaks, it's very powerful, but he doesn't say a lot of words. But he took a beat. Like he was like, like silent. And then he was just like, I'm so proud of you. And that, honestly, that was it. I was like, that's amazing. And then he was probably out of the four parents, as in my husband's parents and my parents, they were all super supportive. But I think my dad was like the biggest cheerleader for the whole thing. He just thought his mind was blown. Yeah.
So you sort of teed us up there, Jen. So this delve into the world of like surrogacy, it all started when you offered to be a surrogate for your friend Edwina and her partner.
Yes.
Can you sort of take us back to what was sort of going on in their lives and your lives at that stage where that decision was taken?
So I can never say the year. I don't know what year it was, but it was a couple of years ago. So my friend Edwina was going through a tough time, and I was actually pregnant with Alfie, my son. And I always make sure I say this: I did not hate pregnancy. I was very lucky to not find it difficult. So that's one tick in terms of why I was able to offer it. I totally appreciate that a lot of people find it awful. So I was lucky, and I quite loved being pregnant with Alfie. And I knew that they were going to Edwina and Charlie were going to get to a point where it was either surrogacy or adoption. And honestly, I don't know where it came from. It just popped into my head. Honest truth. I'd never really read about it. I didn't know anyone who'd done it. I just suddenly thought to myself, I wonder if that's something I could do. And so I went to Ewan. And
so who's Ewan, your husband?
Sorry, Ewan's my husband.
Yeah.
Not just a random, I'm straight. Yes, Ewan. I went to him and I said, I thought to myself, this will be interesting.
How long between having that initial thought and then bringing it up with Ewan?
I can't really remember,
Okay.
but it was pretty quick. Like
Okay,
it was probably like 10 minutes. I don't know. No, it was pretty quick. It was pretty quick because I was like, he's always my first, I hadn't we hadn't done any research or anything yet.
Yeah.
I hadn't done anything yet.
You're just like throwing it out there.
I was
just
like,
to
here
see
it
how
is.
landed. Yeah.
See what happens. Oh, I just knew it was the first hurdle. So I went to him and he'd known, so he and I have been together 18 years and he's known Enweta that whole time because she's a friend of mine from school. So I went to him and I said, hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you reckon? And I honestly thought he'd be like, are you joking? You are 8 months pregnant with our child. Like, what are you doing?
So you were still pregnant?
I was still pregnant.
Right. I didn't know that.
So I hadn't had Alfie yet. And so I went to him and I thought he'd be like, can we just get through this one?
Yeah.
And honestly, it was amazing. He literally said to me, he's like, he also took a beat. He's very considered. And he took a beat and he's like, a lot to think about. Not totally off the table. Let's give it some thought. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, oh, my God, I thought I was going to be the nice person and you were going to stop me. And then I could be like, I tried. But then I was like, wow, this is like, that was humongous. And so then we spent like probably 2 months just doing a lot of research and that was right around the birth of our child. But I just couldn't, I was like, we just were talking to as many people as we could and trying to even get in touch with some people who'd been through it. And then we came to the decision together. So Alfie was, I think, 2 months old and we came to the decision and we're like, yeah, let's offer this. And in that time, I know that Wayne and Charlie had been sort of just getting to a point where it really was, they didn't want to give up on, obviously their own journey. But equally they knew that it was going to be an option. And I think I called Wayne and I said, hey, like they live in Orange. And I called her and I said, hey, this is something I want to offer. I then had to tell her 10 separate times because she was just like, no. She was like, no way.
What was that first reaction from Adina?
Tears. Immediate tears. And what are you talking about? And that's crazy. And oh my God. And then she's told me since that what got her to really consider it and believe me was that we came to her and said, we've been researching this for a few months. And she knows Ewan and I, and she knows that we're both pretty thoughtful people, thoughtful in terms of like we think about what we're going to do, not necessarily, I'm not trying to say we're really nice, but thoughtful and considered people.
Yeah.
And particularly Ewan, and she knows that he would research everything to the nth degree before making a decision. So she said that was what really made her go, oh, okay, like you guys are for real. And then, and then I had to tell her a few times, and I remember Alfie, she came to meet Alfie, came down to Sydney because it was also COVID times, so it was all really weird. And so anyway, when she could, she came and met Alfie, and I remember we were at a cafe in Double Bay, and we were all there, and it was all about Alfie, like exciting, whatever, and there was a few other friends there. And then I just whispered to her and said, hey, I really mean what I said. And she just burst into tears and she was like, let's do it. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I honestly remember where I was standing, how it felt, all of that. And then from there on in, we were just clinical about it,
Jen, like I'm always interested in the why, like why my guests do the thing that they inevitably end up doing. Like what was your why for doing this for Edwina and her partner?
So I think I can't really pinpoint the why in terms of when I first thought of it and why that popped into my head. But in terms of why I wanted to follow through and why I really wanted to do it, was we were so incredibly lucky with our fertility path. Just honestly, like I'll just be honest, just really easy to get pregnant, beautiful pregnancy, beautiful birth, everything was great. And Alfie just even the first couple of months just brought us so much like ridiculous joy, like that I'd never really felt before. And I wasn't a particularly maternal person before that. And so it really took me by surprise. If I think back, I'm like maternal with like my friends and I'm nice, but like I was never like, oh, I have to have children. I was sort of more focused on career. And then it just totally took me by surprise and gave me like a whole new identity. And I'm not going to say purpose because that's awful, but identity, like made me a whole new person. And so I think because of that and because of seeing what Wayne and Charlie were going through, and they're the most incredible humans in terms of their resilience, and anyone who goes through that sort of stuff is amazing to me. But she was just, Wayne particularly is just and actually both of them, just always so upbeat, so lovely, never had the incredible ability to be so happy for all of our friends having kids, and just really lovely humans. And I just knew in my gut that they would just be incredible parents. And I think I was just like, well, it's not that hard for me. Like it's not hard for me to do this. I was like, it's 9 months of my life for like a whole lifetime of happiness for them. And that sounds really, it's so hard to answer these questions without sounding really earnest and like, look, I'm so nice. But like that's genuinely what it is. I was like, it's just not that hard. And I'm a very compartmentalized person. I'm like, don't do that. It's fine. Move on. Like I was just, and it just, yeah, that's why.
I think like obviously timing wise as well, like you were at the tail end of your pregnancy. You've got all those maternal instincts kicking in, all those
they
hormones
got me at
in
a
your
good time.
body. Yeah. They're potentially a little bit vulnerable. You're like, this is great. I'm going to be a parent. They should be parents too.
Everyone should be parents. It's so great.
Maybe.
Like, I am woman. Hear me roar. I can do anything. Maybe.
Could be.
Maybe. If you ask me now, maybe I would do it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? Were there any reservations, Jen, going into it? Or were you, like, as you said, you're quite a compartmentalized person. You can just go, I'm going to do this thing, and then that'll be the end of it, and I'll move on.
Yeah. So the one thing I always get asked is, oh, my God, how is it? And I'm sure you'll get to that. How is it giving away the baby? But in terms of reservations, of course, yes, at the beginning, we were like, well, look, we just need to do a lot of research. And we did. And I was lucky enough, this is weird serendipity. It was the COVID time when you could only go 5K radius. And there was a girl in Bondi who had been a surrogate for her friend in Orange, that they went to boarding school together, all the same as me and Wayne. And surrogacy there's less than 100 surrogacy births in Australia every year. So it's very rare. And so that was wild. She'd done it 5 years ago, and I managed to connect with her, and we did the Bondi to Bronte, and she talked me through everything. And I just, even though I was going on these walks doing this research, I just knew I was going to do it. I just knew. I'd made the decision. I was like, nothing's going to deter me from this. And so Wayne was amazing. She listened to all podcasts, did all the research, did all the, planning, did everything. And I was just like, I'm in it, I'm doing it, and that's it. I don't even need to I don't know. Once I'd made the decision, I was like, I'm doing this. And I knew that we'd done all that research at the start, and I felt comfortable. So no, the only reservation I had was I said to Wayne, we are not doing this if it's going to create an imbalance in our friendship, because no one wants to feel in debt to their friend. Like, that's not fun. And so I said to her, I remember where I was standing outside my apartment, and I standing on the street, walking up and down on the phone. And I said to her, right, okay, if we're doing this, there's no more thank yous. Like, just stop. I know you're grateful. You know I want to do this. Like, I got so much out of it. I was like, it's like when you give a really good present and you feel great. Like, it wasn't just all altruistic. I was like, you and I are doing something that we'll be really proud of. And so once that was my only reservation. I said, I don't want it to create an imbalance for our friendship.
That's a good one. That's a pretty weird coincidence that, you're in Bondi, Edwina's in Orange, and there's this other surrogate who's in Bondi and was a surrogate for someone in Orange. Like,
no, it was
that's
wild.
kind of like weird universe.
Oh, totally.
Vibes there, isn't
and
it?
I'm not a woo-woo universe person
but
at
you live
all.
in Bondi.
But exactly. I was like, I know. But that was wild.
Yeah.
And also I remember, just because it's interesting to share, I said to her, does everyone say to you, you must have this like amazing bond with the kid and it must be just so magical? And she's like, yeah, the kid's 5 and doesn't get it. She's like, doesn't get it. And I was like, and she had, Wayne and Peachy were lucky to have a little boy. This girl had been a surrogate to a little girl, and she said to me, she's like, I think once she gets to like the age of having kids herself, she'll get it. Yeah. So, yeah.
And was everyone in your and Edwina's like inner circle, were they supportive? Was there any naysayers.
Totally supportive. So we really didn't tell a heap of people. I actually got to 20 weeks before we told anyone. So I was wearing a lot of big shirts and just, and I'm lucky enough it sort of sits back, like pregnancy doesn't pop out on me too early. So people probably just thought that I'd eaten too many burgers or something. And so we didn't really tell many people. And so obviously the people we're telling are the inner circle who were like, you know, just so pumped for the whole thing. And then once we started to tell people, it was overwhelming, the just true joy around it. We told everyone at Peachy's 40th in Orange, because I was there and I was like, right, I'll wear a tight dress, and everyone was like, you're pregnant. And and it was like, yeah, people were just blown away. And it was so, that moment, now I'm thinking about this, it gives me goosebumps, and I've never really thought about it properly. That moment, watching them be comfortable enough to tell their friends, because they were so anxious, like they didn't, which is understandable. They didn't want to tell anyone until we got to 20 weeks, which is when you have the, you know, important scan. And watching them finally feel like I can enjoy this pregnancy was just so special, because such a beautiful part of being pregnant is the excitement around you. And people, even randoms, like, you know, old ladies who are like, oh, you know, and I actually love that. A lot of people like back off, but I was like, yeah, like, you know, I come from a small town, so I'm very like, you know, let's talk to everybody. And that joy is such an important part of the whole journey. And I was like, Wayne doesn't get to be pregnant, but she needs that joy around her. So once they told everyone, it was just, because everyone that coming from, like, living in a country town, everybody knew their story, everybody knew all the struggles, and yeah, it was just amazing. It's amazing.
Are you a small business or solo entrepreneur who wishes you had more hours in the day? Have you ever thought about hiring a virtual assistant? Well, the Bondi podcast is sponsored by Remote-E. Remote-E specialise in connecting small businesses and entrepreneurs with the best virtual assistant talent in the Philippines to do all those jobs that you don't want to, so you can focus on growing and scaling your business. If this is something you're interested in, the Bondi podcast can get you 2 weeks absolutely free with Remote-E. Just go to the website, remote-e.com.au/contact, and enter the referral code Bondi for 2 weeks absolutely free. That's 2 weeks absolutely free. Cheers. Can you tell us, Jen, about the process of you as a surrogate, how you get pregnant?
Yeah, so it's just like IVF. So it's a weirdly anticlimactic procedure. So it's very quick, and basically, so it's their embryo. So they'd been through the whole IVF, egg harvesting, creating the embryos, freezing them, et cetera, et cetera. And then I just went in and they put it, and that was it. And I said to the midwife or nurse at the time, I was like, give me what I need to do to make this work. I was like, because Ewan and I had given ourselves, it was a very short window, because we did it in between our two kids, and we didn't want to have too long of a gap. So we decided that we had 4 months, which is essentially 4 tries. And Wayne and Peachy were like, listen, it's 4 tries we wouldn't have had, so let's do it. You know, like it's, and so we just, and then they'd said to us, I think they said it was like a 19% chance that it would work, and it was just really, you know, it's hard because it's less than IVF, and because it's obviously a foreign whatever. Anyway, I don't listen to numbers. I was like, whatever, who cares? And it worked first go.
Wow.
And so I'd said to the midwife, what is there that I can do to make this work? Because this is really important. I was like, come on, tell me what to do. So weird. She said, not a word of a lie. Every single person that I've told to do this, it has worked. Go and get Macca's fries straight away. And I was like,
No way.
And she was like, there is 33 chemicals in those fries, which makes us all feel really good about ever eating them. 33. She goes, I don't know what it is. And she's like, but go and get some. So I went straight from, the procedure was in the city, straight down to Bondi on Campbell Parade Macca's. Obviously got a large because it was just an excuse to eat a large chips. And I FaceTimed them and I was like, guys, like here. And there's a photo. I took a selfie. There's a photo of me and they're getting fries. And so then I went back to the clinic and I told them, I was like, I'm just going to let you know it worked. And she was like, wild. It's wild.
And
Who knows?
what are these 33 magic chemicals
don't
in the
know.
McDonald's
I don't know.
fries
She
that
said that-
impregnate people?
Yeah. I'm like, well, that's because everyone's like goes home drunk, has their fries, has a one night stand and gets pregnant.
Yeah.
But no, like so I don't know. She's like, it's something about the chemicals. She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, is it? And when I went back and told them, they were like, yeah, it's true. Like every single person that they've told to do that at work. So I've done that with all my any friends that have gone through IVF. I'm like, Macca's fries.
See if Mac has advertised that.
Yeah.
They would do so well.
They would too.
Yeah, they would do so
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Come and eat our dodgy fries with
Yeah,
these
yeah,
dodgy
yeah.
chemicals.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then, Jen, what about the pregnancy itself? Like, how was it? Did it feel different to
To my kids.
pregnant with Alfie? Yeah.
It was different, but in an awesome way. It was because all the counselling that we did, so you have to do a lot of counselling to be approved to do it. So it's generally, I want to say enforced, but encouraged by the clinic that you do it through to have counselling. And we'll get into all the legality stuff in a minute. But so all the counsellors, even the fertility specialists, my obstetrician, everybody said do it when you finished your own family because it's a risk. It's a risk. You're taking a risk with your body. What happens if you have to have a hysterectomy and you can't have any more kids, all that. And I was just like, I just knew that this is when I wanted to do it. And such a big reason for that was, and I'll get to your question, such a big reason for that was my husband and I both have our own businesses. And I was like, I don't think that I could do 2 young kids, 2 businesses and be pregnant with someone else's child. So I was like, this is the time. And I just knew in my gut that this was the time to do it. And so I just didn't listen to any of those counsellors and things. And so the pregnancy was different, but I think it made it easier because I knew I was going to do it again. I was going to be pregnant again. So it wasn't the last time that I was going to be pregnant. So it didn't have that final feeling to it. And I'd also done it before. So I was like, I can do this. And then in terms of how it felt connection-wise, I always say my connection is with them as a family. Like it's not just Angus, who's the little boy. It's the whole reason I did it was to see them as a family. So it was sort of beautiful in a different way. Like obviously Ewan and I weren't there like, oh, our little one, like at all. It was different. But we were also had that with them, and I was, I got Wayne to read some stories on tape. So I'd play them. So it's, the baby would recognize her voice, and who knows if that works, but, and just little things like that. And then I would be sending her selfies every day and like, all those things and be like, oh, it's a pineapple today. It's the size and all that stuff. And she would come down for appointments and it was just, the whole thing was magic.
Yeah.
Magic.
So different. But magic.
Different, but magical. Like it's all amazing,
yeah.
Pregnancy generally. But I will say then being pregnant with Matilda, who's my daughter, was a totally different experience because I'd had first pregnancy, which is all like, oh my God, we're pregnant. This is amazing. And it's just so mind-blowing. And then the second one, which was even more mind-blowing. And then the third one, it's like, just get on with it. You got a toddler.
Yeah.
Just get on with it. Just be pregnant. But no one is fanning you. No one is feeding you grapes. Just get on with it.
Yeah.
So they're all very different.
Exactly. You touched on it a little bit there, Jen, but how was your relationship with Edwina and her partner during your pregnancy? You've obviously introduced a very interesting dynamic.
Yep.
Did it feel different at all? Was there a weird pressure or anything there?
No pressure, zero pressure. Like they were so amazing. I honestly can't really remember. Someone asked me this the other day and I can't really remember what it was like before. Like as in our friendship, it's just so what it is now. And I think because we were so clinical about it and we just, I don't know, it's amazing. And to be honest now, it's like, my dad asked me how I felt just before we went into the hospital. And I said, you know what? I feel like I'm having surgery and my friends are having a baby. I was like, that's how I feel. So it just from the moment that he was born, it doesn't matter how he got here, he's theirs. So from the moment he was born, I was just joyful for my friends having a baby. And so then it will kind of, I know it sounds weird, but it kind of goes back to normal. Like my friends have just had a baby and that's it. Like it's, yeah. So the friendship is obviously we're family now. And Ewan thinks it's so funny. He came up with a name for what Alfie and Matilda wasn't born at the time, what Alfie and Angus would call each other. And he thought it was so funny. Womb mates. And I was like, cute. That's cute.
That is good.
Because everyone's like, oh, like magical cousins and like all that. And like there's all these like tummy mummy and all this awful stuff.
Womb mates is good.
Womb
really
mates.
good. Yeah,
Womb
really
mates.
good.
So so in terms of that friendship, it's just, and I think when the boys and Matilda are old enough, that'll be really special. And yeah, and I just think it's their family unit. Like it's not like we're an extended family, but it doesn't really matter how Angus got here. It's their family.
And speaking about how Angus got here, tell us about the day of the birth.
Yeah, wild. So we opted to have an elective Caesar because nobody needs to see me in labour other than Ewan. That just would have ruined everybody's experience. So we had an elective Caesar, so it was all very civilised. And we just went in, and I remember there's actually a video that Wayne took of all of us beforehand, and Ewan was being like, there was no nervous tension, which is weird. Like we were all excited, but there was no like, it was weird. And so we were all just really relaxed. Like we were like, this is what's happening. And Ewan thinks of himself as a very funny guy. So he was cracking jokes, being funny. And there was about 35 hospital staff in the room because everybody wanted to be there. My obstetrician had never done a surrogacy before. There was cameras and everything. Everyone was just like jacked.
How many people are usually in the room?
Like 5.
And there was 35 people in the room?
I say like 35.
Yeah.
It felt very full. I don't know how many. Didn't do a head count. But
and you're not like, guys, can I just get a
like,
little bit of privacy? Yeah.
No, because I was sort of like, it is wonderful. And the thing is, Wayne did a lot of planning for the birth because it is weird for staff knowing who to call what and do what and all that stuff. And so we wanted to orchestrate it, and we had the most incredible social worker at the hospital who managed the whole thing and made sure everybody knew what was going on. And she was just Deb. She's like this angel. She's an angel,
social worker.
Angel. And I'm actually now working with the hospital to put together with Deb some training modules for staff so they get it, because there's so many more surrogacies happening now, and we'll get into all that. But anyway, so the day of the birth, very civilised, only because I'd been through labour, and I was like, well, this is very civilised. Like we just go in and it's like over in half an hour. But there was a lot of staff in there, a lot of just tears and excitement, and Wayne had planned it. What we said was we wanted Angus to come to me because it's good for the baby as well, like when they first come into the world, to like be put on the chest of the whoever carries them. And also Wayne and I wanted to have that moment where I handed him to her, because it was really symbolic for us. I didn't realise how symbolic. I was a bit like, whatever you want, like I'll do, because it is there. I was there, and it was also very exciting for me, but it was their day, you know? So I was like, I will do whatever you want me to do, whatever you want. And so so there was a moment, and I didn't realise how important that was till it happened. And so he came to me, and then everyone was looking at me, and I didn't know what to say because everyone was just looking at me, looking at him. And so I was like, hi on it. Like there was anaesthetic, and there was all these beeping and things. And I was like, and I just go, I go, I hope you enjoyed your home. Which is obviously so poetic, but not. And everyone just like burst out crying. And I was like, I don't know where that came from. And I was like, you can go to your mum now, and like handed him. It's all on video. And
so what I'm picturing there, Jen, is like Rafiki in The Lion King,
yes,
like you,
but legit,
like the Simba.
That's what it was. That's literally what it was. There was no one in the background dancing, So I handed Angus to Wayne, and then off they went, and off I went to recovery, and it was just perfect.
Was that difficult at all for you?
No word of a lie, not at all. Not even one bit. Because I knew from the beginning that he wasn't ours, and I'd had my own child, so I knew the difference. And as I said before, I knew we were going to try again. So there wasn't any like, pregnancy, not doing it again. And my whole purpose was to see them as a family. So then to hand the baby to them, and for them to there was so much elation, like they were just couldn't believe it. Was that totally dwarfed any. There was nothing. There was no feelings of anything. And giving away the baby, and women say, "Weren't you connected?" and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm cold-hearted or what, but I was just like, there you go. And I think because I wasn't connecting with Angus, I was connecting with Angus and his family. So that was the moment they became a family. So then I was just stoked.
That was the aim of the whole thing.
There it is.
Yeah. The three of them. Bang.
Yeah. And I've actually spoken to a few surrogates since, and they say most of them doing it for gay couples. And they're like, you go over to their house and the couple just hands you the baby because you're like, you must want to hold the baby. And it's sort of like, no, I just wanted to see you guys with the baby. Like
I've held the baby.
I was like, I'm done it. Had him for 9 months. I'm good.
Yeah.
And so, and then I went into a room next door to them, and I had to be in there for 5 nights just to recover because it was a Caesar. And this is wild. The only weird feeling that I had. So I expressed for, I think, 6 weeks for them because I just believe that it's really good for the kid. And I didn't know this. This is wild, that apparently your breast milk is developed specifically for that child, their weight and their size and their growth, where they're at and stuff. And so it's all just, anyway. So I was like, well, there's stuff in here. I got to give it to him. So I expressed for 6 weeks. And the only weird feeling that I had was I genuinely palpably felt like I had forgotten something really important for the whole 6 weeks. So my body was like, you're expressing, where's the baby? And I mean, I thought, so I was in the hospital emailing my business partner in the hospital being like, what have we forgotten to do? It's like that feeling, when you're like, I've forgotten something really important. Grandma is sitting at the airport and I've forgotten to pick her up. Like that kind of level of like, I know there's something really serious that I haven't done. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. And then as soon as I stopped expressing, it went away. Wild.
The female body is just crazy, isn't it?
It's like amazing. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's nuts.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is, because obviously you're there going, your body's like, you're supposed to be nurturing this child, and where is it? And my this is a whole other story, but my sister was adopted. So my mum and dad had my sister when they were 18, and then they put her up for adoption, and she came back and found us. Her name is Jen. Her adopted parents called her Jen, and she's identical to me. It's bizarre. She's 52. And anyway, but mum said similarly when she had to give away her baby, she's like, I felt that. She's like, I felt that for like a little while. It's like having that like, when people lose a limb and they like the phantom limb or whatever, like it's wild. The body's.
Yeah. It's nearly like a maternal instinct that's not being satisfied.
Yeah. They're like, where is this child? Cuddle someone's baby. It's crazy. Yeah.
How are you getting that milk to Orange?
Yeah. Well, so freezing it.
Right.
Yeah, freezing it. So I didn't feed him though, ever directly, obviously.
Yeah.
And I also didn't hold him. I didn't hold him at all because I knew, yeah. So that was my choice. Wayne was obviously like, here you go. But because with Alfie, this was just our choice. We didn't have anyone else hold him for the first, 6 weeks or something. Not because of like germs or anything, but because it's been said, and it's now been proven since COVID, that like the less visitors you have, the less the baby's handed around in those early weeks, the more they bond with the mother and the easier breastfeeding is and the easier everything is, because they're not like, like they've just come into the world and they're like, where do I go? I don't know. And they still think they're connected to you. So I just knew for bonding for Wayne, she hadn't carried him. And so I just wanted that for her. So I was like, and he would smell my breast milk and he then sort of attached to me. So I was like, nah, I will not hold him. I didn't hold him, I think, till he was 2 months old.
That must be difficult for grandparents. Like if.
Oh yeah.
So if you're like, no, like we're just gonna hold.
Yeah, but you just.
Alfie for 2 weeks. Like how did your
My parents were fine.
Yeah.
They were. Yeah. I mean, it was also COVID, so everyone was a bit weird about everything. So I could kind of fall back on that a bit, and we just had no visitors. We actually could have visitors in the hospital, but we just said, oh, COVID. Can't come. Sorry.
Did you do that for your second child as well?
For Matilda, yeah.
Yeah.
I just said, we had a few visitors, but I just said, they sleep a lot at the beginning, so just visitors would come when she was asleep. So I'd be like, oh, sorry, she's asleep, you can't hold her.
Right, fair enough. Did you ever have any awkward moments? Can I hold?
No. My mother-in-law once, but no. No. It was fine. It was actually fine. They get it. They were like, it's your choice.
Yeah. I think my parents would lose their shit.
Fair. Fair. And now I think back to like, oh God, I think back to like when I would do the drop-in visit when I was younger, when they had babies, and I'd just pop into the hospital and surprise them. Like, no woman who's just had a baby and is fumbling around and like wearing the knee socks for compression and the bloody thing. No woman wants to pop in. Do not, if anyone is listening, pop in on a person who's just had a baby. Do not do it.
You are talking to someone
who's done that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you think you're being so nice. No.
I thought it was like a thing.
No.
Yeah.
Turning up with balloons or something.
Yeah. I get the piss taken out of me about this like all the time. So I was living in Edinburgh and one of my friends from school was like, she was like the only other person that came over to Edinburgh for university. But we stayed in Edinburgh after university, and her and her partner gave birth. And I was like, well, I'm like one of Lindsay's like longest friends. I went straight after work, buy a bunch of flowers, drove to the hospital, rocked up, and was like, hey. And they didn't have the heart to tell me at the time that, like, Chris, this is like wildly inappropriate. So there's pictures of me in the hospital, like, like God. With them, but with a bunch of flowers, with the baby. And then, like, it's only recently they'll be like, Chris, like, that's not a thing. And I'm like, what do you mean it's not a thing? But like I've watched so many episodes of Friends where like that's a thing.
I was just about to say that. There were episodes of Friends. But no, it's not a thing. And also birth is not like, oh my God, like it's happening. And you got to run to the hospital.
So Lindsay, if you're watching this, and Jamie, I am so fucking sorry about that. But it's a funny story, right?
Yeah.
Bondi podcast listeners, this episode is sponsored by Chief Nutrition. Chief Nutrition specialise in healthy, nutritious snacks that cut the crap. My personal favourite is the collagen protein bar, which I have every day. And good news, Bondi podcast listeners get 10% off all Chief Nutrition products when they order online. And we've got a discount code for you right there in the show notes. So go and use that, go and check out the website, and let me know what you think. Cheers. Right, Jen, this is where things get a bit interesting.
Yeah, and hasn't been interesting up to now.
Like, this is where it kind of gets more interesting. It has been very interesting, but this is kind of where it gets more interesting and kind of the crux of the conversation here tonight. So am I right in saying that at that stage, you could have actually legally kept the child?
It's wild, hey? So
tell me about the surrogacy laws in New South Wales and in Australia. That I'm right in saying that, like, if you at the point you've just had birth, you could have turned around and said, actually, I want to keep this child.
Kind of like him. Yeah. Wild. So, yes. So when you say tell me about the surrogacy legislation in New South Wales, it's
at the time
wholly inadequate. No, it's the same. We haven't got there quite yet. There is no protection for the surrogate, the intended parents, which is what they're called, or the baby. So there's no legal recourse. If I decided, as you said, that I wanted to keep Angus, I was on the birth certificate, as was Ewan, and we also put Alfie on there, just because. And we could choose to keep him. So essentially, Ween and Peachy had to adopt him from us. So that is the framework that's used, adoption. So in that sense, obviously I could say, no, I don't want you to adopt him. I want to keep him. So I am the legal parent. Equally, they could have decided, nah, don't want to. And we would have been left with Angus. Now, in our situation, that obviously seems ridiculous that would never happen. But put yourself in the situation where, and this happens a lot, particularly gay couples finding surrogates on Facebook because it's illegal to pay a surrogate in Australia. And she might give her egg. They might come to an agreement where there's a flimsy deed in place that's just not legally enforceable, where they just, well, it can't be legally enforceable because it's illegal what they're doing. And they organise an amount to pay her. She gets halfway through the pregnancy and goes, oh, it's like it's her egg, so that she's related to the child. And she's like, actually, I love this child. You need to pay me more money. Or the couple decides, yeah, no, I'm not into this. And she's left with the baby. Now, kids will end up in child services. There's, extortion. There's just no protection. We're
delving into this surrogate black market. Like, how prevalent is that in Australia?
Pretty prevalent. There's no, data on it because it's tough to find out. But I'll give you a real world example. My hairdresser knows like 9 couples who've done it. And
Gay couples?
Yeah. So I know that's not it's not very legitimate data, but it's pretty common because 2 things. I always say international surrogacy seems to be a rich man's option and a rich woman's option because you can either choose to do it somewhere safe, like the States, where it's really protected and it's a wonderful setup, but it can cost you $500,000 end to end. And there's a huge long waiting list. You've got to wait a couple of years. Or you can choose to do somewhere that's maybe faster, a little bit cheaper, but the risk is immense. So as an example, the Ukraine was a huge market for Aussies in terms, I hate using the word market, but a huge place for Aussies to find surrogates. And there's horrific stories of, this couple who's been waiting 10 years to have a baby and they finally find a surrogate in the Ukraine, and then the war hits and the last thing they hear is that from their 8-month pregnant surrogate going into a bomb shelter, and then they never hear from her again. So there's that risk, which is obviously less common risk, war, but there's also risk around, there's a horrific recent story around a Greek clinic that got raided. And there was quite a few Australian couples, one couple that I actually know, that had been using this clinic, and it's a black market, and it's like either the kids it's trafficking, I suppose, but I don't know what happens. They also stole the embryos. So they'd say, they didn't work or whatever, and then they had all these embryos. I don't know what they do with them, and that's an extreme example. But it's just a risk. It's a risk to do it anywhere where there's not a good legal framework. And the States is obviously fantastic, but as I said, it's $500,000. It's your parents putting a second mortgage on their house to help you. That's the kind of situation. So there's obviously so many, I don't want to paint such a bleak picture. There's obviously so many wonderful stories. Like I know a lot of couples who've been over, done it in the States, happy kids, like it's all great. And there's fantastic agencies here that help you. But my whole platform is I firmly believe that parenthood should be an option for every Australian or every person, no matter what it looks like. So it doesn't matter if you're gay, fertility issues. I mean, there's a lot of medical reasons now why people can't have kids, just so many things. And I think it should always be an option. And I don't know why we're sending Australians over into those situations. It just doesn't make sense.
So what needs to change in Australia?
Lots of things. I can run you through my position paper if you like.
I've read the position paper.
Yeah. So there's a couple of recommendations that we've made that first of all is exactly what you touched on, that first one. I believe there should be a pre-birth declaration of parentage, what's called a parentage order. So in every other country that offers surrogacy in any way, shape or form, there's what's called a parentage order, which is what you sign if you hand over parentage to somebody, so like in an adoption situation. And in every other country, you do that pre-birth. So as soon as the baby is born, they're yours. So it avoids things like, for example, we navigated it pretty well. Really honestly, there was some weird online loophole and Angus got onto Wayne and Peachy's Medicare. I don't know how. Just happened, and we were like, no one breathe, let's just leave it. But generally Angus would be on our Medicare. And then any legal documents, simple things like daycare applications or anything like that, I would have had to sign. They didn't do that, but I would have had to. And I just think that causes, for Wayne, she already felt like, I didn't carry the child. We navigated it and it was fine, but for a lot of people that would be quite hard. And then also the surrogate might want to get on with their life and, whatever, I don't know. And imagine doing it with a random person. Hey, Susie, my kid wants to go to daycare, can you sign? Like, no. So doesn't make any sense. So I believe it should be pre-birth, just like every other country in the world. And I also firmly believe in compensated surrogacy. So that's where you can pay a surrogate. There's a lot of conservative reasons why you wouldn't do it. They sort of say, it can cause exploitation. My argument to that is an unregulated market causes exploitation, and that's what's happening. Facebook, it's just, there's no protection for anyone. It's Wild West. So I just think, why would you not regulate? And
it's happening anyway, right? So these
they can't ignore it.
these surrogates that are connected on Facebook, they're getting paid anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so I think the government it's easy for them to ignore it, and they've often, unfortunately, they put it as a gay problem. They say it's just that, it's a lot of heterosexual couples don't have to worry about it. It's, they should be fine. Unfortunately, it's absolutely not. And even if it was, they're part of us. Like, that's ridiculous. So it's conservative politics, but they can't ignore it anymore. It's the good thing is it's actually the policymakers are so much more progressive now. There was an inquiry into it 10 years ago and nothing changed. And I think that there's an absolute appetite for it to change now. So I actually have wonderful things to say about the New South Wales government in that way. Like, I think that there's a lot of fantastic MPs that are just so progressive and wonderful. So there's that. So I believe in compensated surrogacy. Now, to get around the exploitation of women, so the idea is that they're sort of saying that women under financial duress will do it or be forced by their partner to do it, which happens in the States. But I believe that Australia can get around that, and I think we have the right frameworks in place to get around that by creating a closed register of surrogates and intended parents like there is for adoption. So you have to apply as a surrogate and you have to apply as an intended parent, and then you get matched. And I think that there should be criteria on both sides to be able to apply. So to get around the exploitation issue with the surrogates, you would say, as an example, means testing. So making sure it's not your single source of income, and all the counselling wonderful counselling that we already have to go through to do surrogacy. That should be mandatory and regulated. And a lot of things, testing, making sure that person is the right thing. And then also equally on the intended parent side, making sure that it's not just people wanting to keep their bikini body, like the Kardashians of the world, but that they have a medical or social reason why they can't carry a child themselves. So I think with that, I see no issue.
See, this all seems like common sense to me, Jen. Like you're not saying anything that's like too wacky.
No.
All right, there, and these were all the recommendations in your position paper. I think you released that August 2023.
Yeah.
What progress has been made since August 2023, I suppose?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've come from startup land. Like, I've run businesses and things since I was 21. And in that world, it's like things happen. Like, you make a decision, you do it. It's not even corporate where that takes longer. It's like you make a decision and you execute on it. Government, way different. But it has to be. Like, originally it was, and I've got a very good friend of mine who said to me, I walked out of a meeting with the Attorney General, who I managed to get in front of, which was wonderful. But at the same time, there was a lot of like, oh yes, we can maybe do something short term. And I said, what's that? And they're like, 18 to 24 months. And I was like, oh. And my dear friend said to me, I walked out and I told her, and she was like, Jen, you just got to trust the process. Like, there's reasons why. So they rush, they rush the voice, there's all these things that they rush, and it doesn't work. So you have to let it all just, and these wonderful MPs that I'm now on a WhatsApp group with these bunch of MPs that we're working with, and they're all just like, it's worth not sprinting and breaking our ankle. It's just, so I've learnt patience. But the good thing is, I think my naivety to all of that has actually been good. Like, I have no idea what lobbying is, and I have no idea about any of it, but it just has made me walk through doors that potentially I shouldn't have, and it's worked. So we are working towards something pretty material in the middle of this year.
Will it get to a level, like, will it be in front of the Premier, for example, at any point?
I'm sure it will. The Attorney General it's weird. Surrogacy falls under his
jurisdiction
remit or whatever, because it's a legislation.
Okay.
So you'd think it would be like women's or health or something, but it's legislation. So it falls under him. He's a lovely guy. And I went and met with him and explained the whole situation, and he was quite alarmed with how it all happens. Like, he was like, I suppose he'd never turned his mind to it. And I think also because, and this is an awful thing to say, but I think because Wayne and Peachy are young, heterosexual couple from rural Australia, and it was a medical reason, and it was sort of more like you can't put that in some box and shove it away. Like it was just pretty like that could happen to anyone type of vibe. So I think that helped, and that's an awful thing to say because it shouldn't be like that, but it's just the way that policy's made, because they need to think about how many people it's going to affect and is it worth bothering and all that stuff. And then also obviously the media that we did sort of helped, you know. So I think hopefully we will see.
Can you tell us anything about that proposal or that piece of work that's going to be coming out or getting done in the middle of the year?
I can tell you that I'll be proud of it if it works.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, look, it's obvious. I've just sort of said what all the recommendations are.
Yeah.
And the process is an inquiry. So they have to do a full scale inquiry into it, and whether that's public or private, that's yet to be seen. But it's a Senate inquiry. So we will see.
Have you faced any, I suppose, like criticism for like lobbying for this, Jen? Obviously, one thing you mentioned there was like there's a perception out there that it's a gay problem. This whole thing about surrogates is a gay problem. Like, have you received any criticism yourself?
Not specific to that, but yes. Oh my gosh. So the Pope, end of last year.
The Pope,
not the Pope did not tweet me, no, but the Pope. Yeah, that sounded really weird. I'll get to the point of it. The Pope at the end of last year came out and basically said surrogates are demons and they're going to hell. So, which was also actually, honestly, it worked in our favor, because it was so ridiculous that it like sparked a whole like uproaring of like, no, like, and it just brought it to the fore. So it was actually great. But yeah, I had on Instagram, like a lot of people writing to me, like randoms, because my Instagram's public, and like just random people writing to me like, yeah, of course, with all things you're going to get the crazy voices, not crazy, opposing voices. And I just always say, like, I respect everybody's opinion. That's fine. Just don't throw it at me. Like, you can have your opinion, but I don't need to hear that I'm a demon and I'm going to hell.
So the Pope made this statement, and then a whole bunch of online keyboard warriors came for you.
Yeah, well, yeah. So people within the, like, not just like I don't
like
have
diehard Roman Catholics, is this? Or
well, it was like I had people sending, most people were sending to me being like, how whack is this? I can't believe it.
Yeah.
And then it actually came because we did something on Mamma Mia. And then that it sort of came through that, like that, because they've obviously got a big following and I don't. But yeah, we had like people when we did that. So it was after the Pope did it, and then we did the Mamma Mia piece, and then I had a lot of people from that contacting. Just most people just saying, a lot of people saying, how do your parents look at you? Like just, which was weird. I was like, pretty proudly. That's how they look.
Where do you think that comes from? Like what's their angle?
That it's unnatural. There was a lot of like, it's unnatural. And I was like, okay, well, cool.
Look at all the food in the supermarket. Like, that's fucking
like,
unnatural.
Yeah, and it's like when people are like vegans and all that stuff, and it's like, but you know, and they get really angry, but they've got like leather seats in their car and stuff, and I'm like, everyone just do everyone run your own race.
Yeah.
Like everyone just run your own race.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like have your beliefs, but don't shove them down people's throats. So there was that, but honestly, more overwhelming than it was the positive voices were way more.
It's interesting. Sometimes there can be more positive voices, but it tends to be those negative ones that kind of shout the loudest, or that stick with you a little bit longer. So how are they contacting you?
Instagram, because I've been quite like open about what I'm doing.
Which you need to be, right?
Yeah, and so only because Ween and Peachy and Ewan and I made the decision together. Because it was weird. In the hospital, the media liaison or whatever came to our room and was like, we want to do a story on you guys. Like, it's pretty amazing what you're doing, blah, blah, and it'll look amazing for the hospital. And I was like, cool, you can have an annual report and it'll look cool. She came in, she spent an hour with us in a time where, like, Ween's just had a baby and I'm recovering. And they were just and then they ended up saying that they couldn't do it because the religion, like, because it's a religious hospital, and they said that the board was not happy with it and they couldn't talk about it. I was like, oh my God. And so they said, this is awful. They actually wrote an email saying, and I don't care about sharing this, they wrote an email. I'm so glad they didn't copy Ween on this email. They said, unfortunately, the board feels it will bring shame on the hospital. And I was like, you work in comms, lady. Like, are you joking with that? Just say it doesn't fit into our comm strategy.
Yeah.
It was wild. Anyway, so
appreciate the honesty, but
I was like, it's cool.
Yeah.
Feeling pretty shameful. Cool, great. No, so that happened.
All that Catholic shame, lovely.
Oh, it's beautiful. I just was hoping for that. So that happened, and then and it just that alerted me to this is going to be a thing.
Yeah, there's another side. Do you think if the board had got wind of this earlier, they might have blocked the whole thing from even happening in the first place?
No, they're happy to do it. They just didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. I asked when we did the project, I said, can I mention it? Because I was like, you guys, can I mention the hospital? Because it's amazing that you did this. Because it was hard logistically for them, and they had to give us 2 rooms and whatever. And I said, can I mention it? Because I think you guys should be proud of it. And then they came back, did some paper shuffling and came back and were like, no, sorry, you can't mention it. I was like, oh my God.
Jesus.
It's ridiculous. But I say it's ridiculous. Beliefs are beliefs. That's fine. I genuinely am like, difference makes the world go round. That's fine. But also don't shove it down my throat and say that I'm shameful, because I'm not shoving it down your throat that I think you're stuffy and old and stupid.
Jen, what does success look like for you in this space? You're putting a lot of
parenthood being an option for every Aussie.
Beautiful.
Simple. That's it. It just should be. I don't think it's fair that some people, whether it's medical or social, I don't think it's fair that they're precluded from something that can bring them so much joy. And I say an option because not everyone wants to do it. I don't think everyone should be a parent. I'm not like, yay, everyone be parents. But I think it should just be an option. And I don't think it's fair that it's not. It's sort of in my mind, particularly for females. I know a lot of women are like, oh, it's why we're put on this earth, blah, blah, blah. But, if they want to try and they want to be a parent, let them. That's and there's no reason why we shouldn't, because Australia is so capable of providing that protection and that opportunity.
Well said. Final question from me, Jen. I suppose it's just words of advice for anyone that's considering being a surrogate for someone else.
Do your research. That's it. Honestly, do your research, because my husband, he's going to kill me for saying this. He has this saying that structure creates freedom. That's it. I was going to balls that up, but structure creates freedom. So if you can plan and know what you're doing, then you feel much more free in what you're doing. I know it sounds like, but that's what he believes, and it's sort of rubbed off on me over the last 18 years. So I think that if you can do the work and do your research up front, it just gets rid of it. You asked me what were my reservations, and I was like, none, because we'd done our research, and once we were in it, there's no going back and then going, oh, hang on, I just want to research that point if you're already cooking. So I think do your research up front and find people that have been through it, because they will share things that you haven't thought about. And also, if you want to, I can only speak from a surrogate's point of view. If you want to do it and you feel in your heart you want to do it, do it. It's the most incredible thing ever.
Beautiful, Jen. That's a really good place to leave it. Thank you very much for coming in and sort of sharing your story tonight, Jen. I've learned so much. And
I loved it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.